The night sky above the alien city was filled with silver clouds and bright moons. Strange lights moved between tall metal towers, glowing like fireflies in the dark. A man walked through the empty streets, tired, hungry, and lost. His name was Evan Cole, a human far away from Earth. Evan's ship had crashed 2 weeks ago on this alien planet called Virelia. The crash destroyed everything he owned. He had no money, no friends, and no home. The city around him was full of creatures from different worlds, tall, glowing beings, robots with steel faces, and aliens who spoke in deep musical voices. And among them, Evan was nothing more than a poor wanderer. He tried to find work. No one wanted a human. Some aliens looked at him with disgust. Others didn't even look at him at all. He slept in the streets, ate leftovers from market bins, and dreamed of the blue sky of Earth that he would never see again. One cold evening, while searching for a place to rest, Evan noticed a small digital board flashing in an alley. The sign said in alien symbols, "Room for rent, apply inside." He wiped the dust off his jacket and followed the glowing arrow. At the end of the narrow alley stood a large, old mansion, dark, quiet, and half-covered with silver vines. It looked completely different from the bright modern city around it. The front gate opened slowly as if it had been waiting for him. Evan hesitated but stepped inside. The air inside was cold and smelled like metal and old perfume. Strange paintings hung on the walls, portraits of tall alien figures with shining blue eyes. The floor hummed slightly like the house itself was alive. Then from the shadows of the main hall she appeared, a tall woman with pale gray skin and long silver hair. Her eyes glowed softly, not with anger but with quiet sadness. She wore a long, dark robe with glowing threads running through it. When she spoke, her voice was calm and heavy like distant thunder. "You are the human," she said. "Why are you here?" Evan tried to stand straight. "I saw your sign. I need a room. I don't have money, but I can work. I can fix things." Her eyes studied him like a scientist studying a strange creature. "No money?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "None." She sighed softly and turned her gaze to the large window behind her. The light from the moons reflected on her face. "I don't rent to troublemakers," she said. "And humans. Humans often bring trouble." "I'm not looking for trouble," Evan said quietly. "Just a place to stay. I can repair machines, clean, cook, anything you need." For a long moment there was silence. Then the woman finally said, "My name is Zira. I live here alone. The others call me strange. Perhaps they are right." Her lips moved slightly, almost forming a sad smile. "You will work here for 1 week. If you prove useful, you may stay. If not, you leave." Evan nodded quickly, relief flooding through him. "Thank you. I won't disappoint you," Zira didn't reply. She walked past him, her robe whispering across the floor. "Follow me." She led him through the halls of the mansion. Every room was filled with alien technology, floating orbs of light, glowing books that whispered, and walls that changed color when touched. But the place felt empty, lifeless, as if it had been waiting for years for someone to speak inside it again. She showed him a small room with a narrow bed and a cracked mirror. "You will sleep here," she said. "You start work tomorrow. Do not enter the west hallway, ever." "Understood," Evan replied, but his curiosity was already awake. When Zira left, he looked around the room. It was dusty but quiet and far better than the cold streets. He sat on the bed feeling warmth for the first time in weeks. He wondered who this alien woman really was. Why did she live alone in such a big house? And why did her eyes look so sad when she spoke? Late that night, as the moons rose higher, Evan couldn't sleep. He kept hearing strange sounds, soft whispers and the faint hum of machines under the floor. Then somewhere in the west hallway he heard a sound that made him freeze. A cry. It was soft, like someone weeping quietly behind a door. He stood up, heart beating fast, and stepped into the hallway. The lights flickered as he walked. The sound came from behind a large metal door marked with strange symbols, the one Zira had told him never to enter. He moved closer, trying to listen. The cry stopped. Only silence remained. Suddenly he felt something watching him, not from the door but from behind. He turned around and saw Zira standing there in the dark, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "I told you not to wander," she said softly. Evan froze. I heard something." Her face was unreadable. "This house has memories," she whispered. Some of them do not like to be disturbed. She turned and walked away, her silver hair flowing behind her. Go back to your room, human. You have work tomorrow. Evan returned to his bed, but sleep never came. The image of her glowing eyes and the sound of that quiet cry stayed in his mind. Something was wrong in that house, something hidden, and tomorrow he would start to find out what it was. The next morning, a pale light entered through the silver windows of the mansion. Evan opened his eyes slowly, unsure for a moment if it was all real. The house, the alien woman, the strange sounds from last night. The soft hum of the mansion reminded him that it was not a dream. He was still here, in the home of the alien landlady, Zyra. He stood up and stretched. His back hurt from the hard bed, but he was grateful. At least he had a roof above his head. He cleaned himself with the strange mist shower that came from the wall and put on his only jacket, torn but clean. When he stepped out into the hall, the house felt different. It was too quiet, almost like it was listening. The air had a soft vibration, and the walls seemed to move faintly like they were breathing. Zyra appeared at the end of the hallway, her silver hair glowing in the dim light. She carried a thin glass tablet with strange symbols floating on it. You're awake, she said, her tone calm but cold. Follow me. Evan walked behind her through long corridors filled with alien machines and portraits of unknown faces. Some paintings moved slightly. The eyes in them followed him as he walked. It made him shiver. Zyra stopped near a broken wall panel. You said you can fix things. Start here, Evan nodded. I'll do my best. He knelt down and opened the panel. Inside, glowing wires pulsed like living veins. He took a deep breath and began to repair them carefully. After a few minutes, the lights flickered back to life. A soft hum filled the hall. Zyra watched silently. Impressive, she said quietly. You understand alien tech better than most humans. Evan smiled slightly. I learned during the war. I fixed ships, machines, anything that kept me alive. Her eyes softened for a second, but then she turned away. Work fast. There's more to do. Hours passed. Evan worked in the garden, cleared dust from machines and repaired doors that hadn't opened in years. The mansion began to breathe again. Lights flickered on. Machines started humming and the cold silence slowly faded. In the afternoon, Zyra brought him a tray of food, glowing blue fruits and a bowl of warm soup that smelled faintly sweet. This is all I can offer, she said. Evan nodded gratefully. It's more than I had in weeks. She stood there for a moment as if she wanted to say something, then turned and walked away without a word. As the day passed, Evan explored more of the mansion. Every room seemed to have a story. He found a library with floating books that whispered when touched. He found a large hall filled with statues, tall alien figures, all with their heads bowed. But one place always drew his eyes, the west hallway. The one Zyra told him not to enter. It was darker than the rest of the house. The air there felt heavier. Sometimes he thought he saw lights flickering behind the closed door at the end. Sometimes he thought he heard faint footsteps, even though he knew Zyra was on the other side of the mansion. That night, after finishing his work, Evan sat near the window of his small room. Outside, the alien moons glowed bright blue. The city lights in the distance looked like a sea of stars. For the first time, he felt almost peaceful. But peace never lasts long. He heard it again. The sound. A soft, broken cry echoing through the west hallway. He froze. His heartbeat grew faster. He told himself it was just the house and maybe wind, maybe old machines. But it sounded too real. Too human. He stepped into the corridor. The lights dimmed as he walked. The walls seemed to whisper as if warning him to turn back. But curiosity pulled him forward. He reached the west hallway. The same heavy metal door stood there, covered in strange symbols. The cry came again, softer, sadder. He touched the door. It was cold. He pressed his ear against it and listened. The cry stopped. And then suddenly a faint whisper came through the metal. Help me. Evan jumped back, fear in his chest. He looked around. The hallway was empty. But the whisper had been real. He was sure of it. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Slow, calm. He turned quickly. Zyra was standing there, her eyes glowing brighter than before. But this time her face wasn't angry. It was unreadable, a mask of emotion she was trying to hide. I told you not to come here, she said quietly. Evan stammered. I heard something. Someone was crying. There's someone behind that door, isn't there? Her gaze hardened. You humans always hear what you shouldn't. This house holds memories. Not all of them are kind. Then what's behind that door? He asked. For a long moment. Zyra said nothing. Then she whispered, my past. The words hung in the air like smoke. Before he could ask more, she turned away. Go back to your room, Evan. You have done enough for today. He watched her walk down the hall, her shoulders heavy, her steps slow. For the first time, she looked less like an alien, and more like someone deeply human. Evan returned to his room, but sleep refused to come. The whisper kept echoing in his mind. Help me. The next morning, when he entered the main hall, something was different. The door to the west hallway was open, just a crack. Enough for a thin beam of blue light to escape. Zyra was nowhere in sight. Evan looked at the door, then back at the empty hall. His hands trembled, but his curiosity burned brighter than his fear. He took a deep breath and stepped toward the light. The blue light from the half-open door spilled softly across the floor, dancing like water. Evan stood still, his breath short, his mind full of questions. The house was quiet again, too quiet. Somewhere deep inside, the same faint voice still echoed in his memory. He looked once over his shoulder. Zyra was nowhere to be seen. The air felt colder near the west hallway. Something unseen was watching him, but curiosity had already defeated his fear. He touched the edge of the door and pushed it open. The hinges groaned softly. A wave of cold air brushed across his face. Inside was a long, dark room filled with rows of stasis pods, tall glass chambers glowing with pale blue light. Dust covered some of them. Others still pulsed slowly like sleeping hearts. The walls were lined with alien symbols and thin wires that ran into the floor. The sound he had heard and that quiet cry seemed to come from somewhere among those pods. He walked carefully, his boots making small echoes. One of the pods flickered weakly, its glass cracked. Inside it, he saw a shadow of a tall figure, motionless. He stepped closer. The lights flickered again, and suddenly a hologram burst to life above the pod. A moving image of Zyra, smiling, her eyes bright and full of life. She stood beside another alien male with the same glowing eyes. They laughed together, holding hands, their faces shining with joy. Evan stared, frozen. The hologram showed Zyra's face, younger, happier, human-like in her emotion. The male alien touched her cheek, whispering something Evan could not understand. Then the image faded into static and vanished. He stepped back, confused. So this was her husband, he murmured. A quiet voice behind him said, Yes. Evan turned sharply. Zyra was standing at the doorway, her face half in shadow. Her eyes glowed, but not with anger and with pain. You disobeyed me again, she said softly. You entered the place I told you never to touch. I'm sorry, Evan said quickly. I heard a voice. Someone was crying. I thought someone was trapped. Zyra walked forward slowly, her steps silent on the metal floor. There is no one alive here, human. Only memories. She stopped beside the broken pod and looked at it for a long time. He was my mate, she whispered. His name was Varen. He died during the war. Because of humans, Evan lowered his eyes. I didn't know. No, she said bitterly. You couldn't have known. You are too young. But the war took everything. My people called humans the destroyers. They burned our colonies and we fought back. When it was over, neither side won. We both lost what mattered. She placed her hand on the cracked glass. For a moment, her expression softened. He was brave. He believed that peace between species was possible. He died believing that dream. Evan watched her silently. In that moment, the cold, distant alien woman he had met seemed fragile, broken by loss. Zyra turned to him, her eyes glistening faintly. You should leave this place. I should throw you out for your disobedience. Evan swallowed hard. If you want me to go, I will. But I'm sorry for your loss. I know what it's like to lose people too. For a long moment, Zyra said nothing. The silence between them felt heavy. Then unexpectedly, she said, No, you will stay. Evan blinked in surprise. Stay? Yes, she said. You've awakened memories that should have remained buried, perhaps. It is time I face them. She turned away and began to walk toward the door. Come. There are things you should know if you are to live under my roof. Evan followed her quietly, his mind racing. They returned to the main hall. Zyra stood near the window looking at the twin moons. My people believe emotion makes us weak, she said. We live long lives, but without warmth. Varen was different. He taught me laughter, small things, human things. He said emotions make us strong. She looked at Evan. Now you bring those same emotions into my house again. You remind me of him. Reckless, curious, foolish. Evan gave a small, awkward smile. I'll take that as a compliment. For the first time, Zira's lips curved slightly. Perhaps it is, but her face grew serious again. Still, this house remembers. The systems are connected to my mind. Sometimes they speak through the walls. That is what you heard. Echoes of my memories. Do not be afraid of them. Evan nodded slowly. I understand. Good, she said quietly. You have work tomorrow. The house needs to be alive again, maybe. So do I. That night after she left, Evan sat by the small window in his room. The sky outside was deep violet, filled with moving lights from ships above the city. He thought of Zira, her loneliness, her strength, and the sadness she carried like a shadow. He now understood the cry he had heard. It wasn't a ghost or a machine. It was her pain, echoing through the halls of her own home. As he drifted towards sleep, he whispered to himself, maybe I can help her, even if I have nothing else to give. But somewhere deep inside the mansion, the machine stirred again. A red light blinked briefly on one of the walls. A distant voice, not Zira's, whispered in an ancient alien tongue. The house was not only full of memories, it was alive, and it had started to wake up. Days passed inside Zira's mansion, and the silence that once filled the halls slowly began to fade. The machines that had slept for years started humming again. The lights grew warmer. The gardens outside began to glow faintly, their silver leaves catching the light from the twin moons, and at the center of it all was Evan, the broke human who had somehow brought life back to a house that even its owner had forgotten how to love. Each morning, he woke early and worked without complaint. He cleaned, repaired, and adjusted the strange alien systems that kept the mansion alive. Zira often watched him from a distance, her expression unreadable. One morning while he worked in the overgrown garden, Zira walked out to him. The sunlight shimmered on her pale gray skin, and for the first time she didn't look distant. You've repaired the atmosphere regulators, she said softly. I haven't felt this air in years. Evan smiled, wiping sweat from his forehead. It's not much. Just needed some care. Zira's eyes glowed faintly. Care. That's a rare word on this planet. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the soft hum of life returning to the garden. Then, from deep underground, a faint vibration ran through the ground, a pulse steady and strange. Zira's expression changed instantly. She looked toward the horizon, her face tightening. Something's wrong. Later that night, Evan sat in the main hall, looking at the flickering lights outside. The city of Virelia glowed brightly, but above it he could see ships, small dots moving slowly across the sky. He found Zira in her study, staring at a holographic map that floated above her desk. Lines of red light crossed the city. What's happening? He asked. Her eyes didn't move. Patrol ships, she said. Bounty hunters and military scouts. For what? For humans. Evan froze. Humans. But I thought the war ended years ago. It did, Zira replied. But fear never ends. Some still believe humans are dangerous, that they bring chaos wherever they go. You being here could attract them. Evan's throat went dry. Should I leave? Zira turned to him, her face calm but her voice softer than before. If you leave, they'll find you in the streets. If you stay, they might find us both. Either way, it's dangerous, he looked at her. Then we face it together. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe even admiration. You would risk your life for me? For this house? Evan smiled faintly. You gave me a place when no one else would. That's worth more than money. For a long moment, Zira said nothing. Then she turned back to the hologram. You are a strange human, Evan Cole. Over the next few days, the mansion grew tense again. Zira became quieter, often lost in thought. Evan noticed her standing near the windows at night, looking up at the stars as if searching for someone. One evening, while they were repairing an old generator together, she spoke suddenly. My people believe emotions make us weak. But when I lost my husband, the silence made me weaker than any emotion could. Evan looked at her. Maybe feelings don't make us weak. Maybe they remind us we're still alive. Zira studied him carefully, her glowing eyes softer than ever before. Perhaps. You are right. For the first time, she smiled. A small, fragile smile that made her look younger, almost human. But the warmth didn't last. That same night, a sharp alarm echoed through the mansion. Red lights flashed across the halls. Evan jumped up, heart pounding. Zira ran to the control console, her fingers flying across glowing panels. "What's happening?" he shouted. She didn't answer right away. Then, in a voice heavy with dread, she said, "They've found us." Through the window, Evan saw bright lights descending from the sky, military ships, their engines roaring. He could hear distant voices through loudspeakers in an alien tongue. Zira turned to him. "Go to your room, hide." "I'm not hiding," Evan said firmly. "They're here for me, aren't they?" Her jaw tightened. "Yes, but they will have to go through me first." Evan stared at her. "You'd fight your own kind for me?" Zira's voice was calm but fierce. "I have already lost one person I loved because of this war. I will not lose another because of fear." Before he could answer, a loud explosion shook the house. The front gates shattered in a burst of fire. Shadows moved outside. Soldiers, their armor glowing under the moonlight. Zira touched a panel on the wall, and the entire mansion shifted. Metallic shutters closed over the windows and the lights dimmed to red. "Stay behind me," she ordered. She lifted a strange weapon, a silver staff that glowed with blue fire. When the first soldier entered, she struck. A burst of energy filled the room, sending them flying back. Evan ducked behind a pillar, watching in awe. Zira moved like lightning, every motion precise and graceful. But there were too many. He saw one soldier aim from behind her. Without thinking, he jumped out, grabbing a fallen shield and blocking the shot. The blast hit the shield, throwing him across the floor. Pain burned through his arm. Zira turned instantly, rage flashing in her eyes. She raised her staff and unleashed a shockwave that sent the remaining soldiers fleeing. When the battle ended, she rushed to Evan's side. "You fool," she said, her voice shaking. "You could have been killed." Evan managed a weak smile. "Guess I'm still useful." Zira stared at him for a moment, then sighed. "You humans, always risking everything for someone else." She helped him up. "Rest, you've done enough." As she walked away, Evan looked at her silhouette, tall, strong, and shining in the fading light of the burning sky. He whispered to himself, maybe she's not as alone as she thinks. Outside, the patrol ships circled once more, then vanished into the dark clouds. But in the distance, a message was already being sent, a signal to the alien authorities. The location of a human had been confirmed, and this time, no one would ignore it. The morning after the attack was quiet, too quiet. Smoke still rose from the broken gates outside Zira's mansion. The air smelled like burned metal and dust. Evan sat on the floor, his arm bandaged, watching Zira move silently through the ruins of her once peaceful home. She didn't speak much. Her glowing eyes stayed cold, fixed on the damage. The machines in the walls hummed low, as if the house itself was grieving. Evan finally said, "They'll come back, won't they?" Zira stopped. "Yes," she said. "And next time they won't come alone." Evan stood up, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. "Then we fix this place. We prepare." Zira looked at him for a moment, almost surprised. "You humans never stop fighting, do you?" He smiled weakly. "Guess that's one thing we're good at." For the next 2 days, they worked side by side. Evan repaired the defense panels, and Zira reprogrammed the drones that still responded to her commands. The mansion slowly began to recover, though the silence between them grew heavy. Evan could see something was troubling her. She often stopped mid-work and stared out the window, lost in thought. Finally, he asked, "What's on your mind?" Zira turned slowly. "Those who attacked us, they were not strangers. I recognize their insignia. Who are they?" "They are part of the Varelian Command, my old unit. My comrades from the war." Evan froze. "Your comrades?" "Yes," her voice was distant. "They knew me once. I trained with them, fought beside them. They must have tracked my energy signature when I activated the house defenses." Evan frowned. "Then they know you're alive, and that you're hiding a human." Zira nodded. "To them, it's betrayal. I broke their code. I helped the enemy." That night, a storm rolled across the sky. Thunder shook the windows and lightning flashed over the city. Evan couldn't sleep. He stood near his window, watching rain fall on the glowing streets. Then he saw them, Ships. 3 of them, descending slowly through the storm. Their lights cut across the clouds, landing near the edge of Zira's property. He ran to the hall. "Zira, they're here!" She was already waiting in the main room, wearing a dark battle cloak and holding her glowing staff. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with emotion. "I knew this would happen," she said softly. "They won't destroy my home again." Before Evan could speak, the front doors burst open. Cold wind rushed in. 3 alien soldiers entered, their armor shining, their weapons pointed. Behind them stood a tall figure, a commander, his silver eyes sharp and cold. "Zira of Virelia," he said, his voice echoing. "You live," Zira raised her chin. "Commander Thalen, still serving the same cause, I see." The commander stepped forward. "We believed you dead. Now we find you hiding a human, an enemy fugitive." Why? Zira's expression didn't change. "Because he is not the enemy." Thalen's eyes narrowed. "He is human. That is enough." Evan stepped forward, but Zira held up a hand, stopping him. "You will not harm him," she said coldly. Thalen laughed bitterly. "You defend him? You the one who once led us against his kind? You shame your people." "I shame no one," Zira said firmly. "I fought for peace, not hate. The war ended, Thalen. When will you?" The commander's face hardened. "We end when the last human stops breathing." He turned to his soldiers. "Seize him." Before they could move, Zira's staff blazed with blue fire. The floor lit up with energy. The soldiers were thrown back as the mansion's defenses came alive. Walls shifting, drones activating. Evan grabbed a shield from the floor, ducking as plasma blasts filled the hall. The air smelled of ozone and fear. "Get behind me," Zira shouted. Evan refused. "Not this time." He rolled across the floor, knocking one soldier's weapon aside. He struck another with the shield. Pain shot up his arm, but he didn't stop. Zira moved like a storm, her staff sending waves of light that cut through the smoke. The commander charged forward, striking Zira's weapon with his own. Sparks flew. The 2 locked eyes, once allies, now enemies. "You were my sister in arms," Thalen hissed. "Now you fight for vermin." "I fight for what's right," she said through clenched teeth. "You've forgotten what that means." With a sudden twist, Zira disarmed him and pushed him to the floor. Her staff glowed brighter, aimed at his chest. "Leave," she said, "and tell your masters the truth. Humans are not our enemies." "Ignorance is," Thalen glared at her, breathing hard. "You will regret this." He touched a button on his wrist, and the soldiers vanished in a flash of light, teleported away. The mansion fell silent once again, except for the sound of the storm outside. Zira dropped her staff, breathing heavily. Evan hurried to her side. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, but now they will come back. With more." Evan looked at her, his face determined. "Then we'll be ready." She stared at him for a long time. Rain slid down the windows like tears. "You could still leave," she said quietly. "Save yourself," Evan shook his head. "You saved me when you didn't have to. Now it's my turn." For the first time, Zira couldn't find words. Her voice broke softly. "You humans. You always give when you have nothing." Evan smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why you keep us around." As the storm faded, the 2 stood side by side, looking out at the horizon. The city lights flickered below, and far above, ships moved like silent shadows. The war might have ended years ago. But for them, it was starting again. The rain had stopped, but the air inside the mansion was still heavy with smoke and silence. Broken metal and shattered glass covered the floor. The once living house now felt wounded, just like the 2 beings who stood within it. Zira knelt beside Evan, pressing her hand against his shoulder. Blood soaked through the bandages she had wrapped earlier, but the wound was deep. He tried to stay awake, his breath short and shaky. "Don't move," Zira said softly. "You'll make it worse." He gave a weak smile. "You're really bad at following your own advice. You fought half an army out there." Her glowing eyes softened. "You talk too much for someone losing blood." Evan chuckled faintly, but the sound turned into a cough. Zira lifted a vial filled with shimmering blue liquid and placed it against his skin. The wound hissed, glowing faintly as the alien medicine began to work. Within seconds, his breathing steadied, and the color slowly returned to his face. He blinked at her. "You saved me again." "You keep forcing me to," she replied quietly. As night fell, Zira sat beside the fire pit in the main hall. The house's defense systems were offline, the power flickering weakly. She looked at Evan, who was resting nearby, wrapped in a blanket. She had seen countless battles, lost soldiers, and watched stars burn, but never had she feared losing someone like this. When Evan opened his eyes again, he found her staring at the flames. "You should rest," he murmured. "I don't sleep much," she said without looking at him. "Sleep brings memories." "Of your husband?" Zyra nodded slowly. "Varen, he was a dreamer. He believed peace between our worlds was possible. The last time I saw him, he was flying toward a human colony to negotiate a truce." She paused, her voice trembling slightly. "They shot his ship down before he landed." Evan sat up carefully, the pain in his arm forgotten. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "If it means anything, not all humans are like that. Some of us just try to survive." Her eyes glowed faintly as she looked at him. "I know. I used to think all humans were monsters, but then one appeared at my door, hungry and hopeless, and fixed what I could not." Evan smiled gently. "Guess I'm more useful than I look." For the first time, Zyra laughed, a real soft laugh that seemed to echo through the halls. It was brief but beautiful. "You are," she admitted, "but now you've made things complicated. My people will never stop hunting us." "Then let them come," he said. "You've lived in fear long enough. Maybe it's time to stop hiding." Zyra turned to the window. Outside, the twin moons shone bright over the ruined city. Easy words for someone who still believes in hope. Evan smiled faintly. "You should try it sometime." Hours passed. The storm outside had cleared completely. In the quiet of the night, Zyra stood on the balcony looking up at the stars. Her long silver hair shimmered under the moonlight. Evan joined her slowly, still limping slightly. "It's beautiful," he said. "Yes," she replied. "But beauty means little when danger hides beneath it." He leaned against the railing beside her. "You ever think about leaving this planet?" Zyra's gaze shifted toward the distant sky. "I used to. After Varen died, I stayed here because I had nowhere else to go. This house, it's a prison made from memories." "Then let's leave it," Evan said simply. "You have a ship, right?" Her eyes widened. "You want to run?" "No," he said quietly. "I want to live." Zyra looked at him for a long time. "If we leave, we'll be hunted. The military will see it as treason. Then they can chase us through every star they want," Evan replied. "I'm done being afraid. You should be too." There was silence between them, not cold but full of unspoken understanding. Finally, Zyra turned toward him. "You're a strange human, Evan Cole." He grinned. "You keep saying that. And every time you prove me right." Suddenly, an alarm sounded from deep within the mansion. Red lights flickered again. Zyra rushed to the console. "It's a transmission," she said. "They've found our location again. They're mobilizing half the fleet." Evan moved beside her. "Then we don't wait. We go now." Zyra hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "There's an old ship hidden beneath the mansion. It's been inactive for years, but you might be able to fix it." Evan grinned. "Let's find out." They ran through the lower halls where the walls glowed faintly with ancient light. A hidden door opened, revealing a massive hangar buried deep underground. Dust floated in the air, and at the center stood a sleek silver ship, old but beautiful. Evan ran his hand along its surface. "You kept this here all this time?" "It was Varen's," Zyra said softly. "The last ship he ever built." Evan looked at her. "Then let's make it fly again." Hours later, the engines hummed alive once more. The ship shook as power surged through its core. Zyra stood in the pilot's seat, her eyes shining with determination. "Are you ready?" she asked. Evan sat beside her, strapping in. "I've been ready since the day I crashed here." The hangar doors opened with a roar. The ship rose slowly, light spilling in as they ascended toward the night sky. Zyra took one last look at the mansion, her home, her memories, her pain. Then she whispered, "Goodbye." The engines ignited and the ship shot into the heavens. The stars stretched around them like rivers of light. For the first time in years, Zyra felt something she hadn't in a long time: freedom. She glanced at Evan, who was staring in awe at the stars. "Where do we go now?" he asked. She smiled softly. "Anywhere the stars still shine." But deep behind them, far below on the planet's surface, a red beacon pulsed once more. A signal to the fleet. Target escaping. Pursue. The hunt had begun. The stars stretched endlessly before them. A sea of light and silence. Zira's ship glided through the black void like a silver ghost, its engines whispering softly. Behind them, the planet Virelia was only a small blue dot fading into darkness. For a long time, neither spoke. Zira focused on the controls while Evan stared at the stars, his mind still struggling to believe they had escaped. Finally, he broke the silence. "So we did it." Zira gave a faint smile. "For now." Evan leaned back in his seat. "You don't sound too happy about it." Her eyes stayed on the glowing map in front of her. "Because they will come. The fleet won't stop. I know how they think I was one of them." Evan looked at her. "Then we keep running." Zira turned to him. "Running can't last forever." He shrugged, smiling slightly. "Then we keep moving until we find somewhere to stop." For the first time since they had left the planet, Zira laughed softly, a quiet, tired laugh. "You make everything sound so simple, human." "Maybe it is," he said. "You just have to believe it can be." Hours passed. The ship's lights dimmed as they entered deep space. Evan walked to the observation window where galaxies shone like distant fires. He placed his hand against the glass, whispering, "So many stars. And I thought my life was over when I crashed on your planet." Zira joined him, her reflection glowing beside his. "Maybe it was meant to happen. Maybe the universe wanted you to find me." Evan smiled. "That's one way to see it." She looked at him, her eyes soft and full of unspoken emotion. "When I first saw you, I thought you were just another desperate human. But you've changed this house, this place, and me." He turned to her. "You changed me too. Zira, you made me believe kindness still exists out there, even among the stars." For a moment they stood in silence, only the quiet hum of the ship between them. Suddenly alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the control panel. Zira rushed forward, her hands flying over the glowing keys. "They've found us," she said. "Two ships closing in fast." Evan's heart pounded. "Can we outfly them?" "I can try." The ship lurched as Zira pushed the engines to their limit. The stars stretched into streaks of light as they jumped into faster-than-light travel. But the enemy ships followed, their energy beams lighting up the dark. The chase began. Zira's eyes burned with focus. "Hold on!" The ship spun between asteroids, dodging debris and plasma blasts. Evan grabbed the support rail, trying to stay steady. "Remind me never to question your driving again." "Noted," she said sharply. But there was a hint of amusement in her tone. An explosion rocked the ship, a near miss. Sparks flew from the ceiling, shields down to 30%. Evan shouted. Zira gritted her teeth. "We can't keep running. I need you to go to the rear bay. Activate the decoy drones." Evan hesitated. "You mean the ones that haven't been tested since your husband built them?" "Exactly those," she said, her voice steady. "Now move." He ran through the corridor, smoke rising around him. The walls vibrated under the impact of another blast. Reaching the rear bay, he found 6 small metallic spheres locked in their racks. He hit the activation switch. The drones powered up, glowing with blue light. "Come on, come on." The bay doors opened, releasing the drones into space. A second later, they split into dozens of glowing copies of Zira's ship, scattering across the stars. Back in the cockpit, Zira pulled hard on the controls. The enemy scanners went wild, losing their target among the fake signals. "They've lost us." Evan shouted, running back in. Zira exhaled slowly. "Good work, human." He grinned. "You can call me Evan, you know." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I will." When the danger passed, the two sat in silence again. The ship drifted into a quiet region of space, a nebula glowing soft blue and gold. It was peaceful, almost dreamlike. Zira looked out the window. "We're safe for now." "No signals, no pursuers," Evan nodded. "Then maybe it's time we stop running." She turned to him, her voice quiet. "You really think we can find peace out here?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But maybe peace isn't a place. Maybe it's a person." Zira looked at him, her eyes glowing softer than ever before. The silence between them was full of meaning. Not fear, not duty, but connection. She whispered, "You humans always find strange ways to say the simplest things." Evan smiled. "That's what makes us human." Hours later, Zira guided the ship toward a small green planet hidden behind the nebula. Its surface shone with blue oceans and bright forests. "This world is unclaimed," she said. "No cities, no wars, only life." Evan's voice was full of wonder. "A fresh start?" "Yes," Zira replied softly. "Maybe that's what we both needed." The ship descended slowly through the clouds, landing beside a quiet lake surrounded by silver trees. The engine shut down, leaving only the sound of wind and water. Zira stepped outside first, breathing in the fresh air. It feels alive. Evan followed, smiling. You sound almost human when you say that. She looked at him with a small laugh. Maybe I've spent too much time around you. They stood side by side, watching the twin suns rise over the horizon, two lights blending into one. Zira turned to him, her voice gentle. Maybe I don't need a husband, she said softly. Maybe all I needed was someone human, Evan smiled, his eyes shining. And maybe I never needed money. Just a reason to stay. They both laughed quietly, the sound echoing across the lake. Above them, the stars shimmered like distant memories, watching over two souls who had finally found peace, not as enemies, but as companions in the vast, endless sky. Final line. In a cold galaxy, one act of kindness was enough to light a new sun.